Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle!
The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small!
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Gold Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Hacks and Ferments, and our subscribers. We're recording on Monday, September 22nd, 2025. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is my co-host, Aaron Campo, and our engineer, Lickett. Well, let's just get right into this. The Sounders suffered another annoying result. This one, a loss to Austin FC. The losing goal comes in the 6th minute of stoppage time, second half stoppage time. Another late goal that keeps Sounders from getting the points they probably deserved in this one. And what's so frustrating about this one is how the goals they gave up were scored, the missed opportunities that they had, and that this seems to be a pattern that is developing where they don't necessarily play bad. I thought the Sounders at least deserved a point in this game, but they also are prone to these silly mistakes that cost them points and are really sort of inexcusable and really avoidable. Aaron, I was literally up last night worrying about this game because that's how my stupid brain works. But what did you make of this result?
Well, I think one of the more frustrating results of the season, maybe more frustrating than the Galaxy game, just in the sense that the way it happened, Austin had not really, they had the one good chance on the header that Andrew Thomas made a good save of. Mm-hmm. And other than that, that's really all they created in the second half.
I agree.
And all they created in the first half was the goal, which they didn't really create. Like, credit to the pressure and making something happen.
If you can call
that's
it
what
that.
They try to do. Yeah. Fair enough.
Like, but, he's not even pressing. He's not really even he's just getting in the way of a pass. He's not really applying pressure. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, very fair. Austin was not doing much pressing at all. Which, I mean, it was, 90 degrees and humid, so who can blame them? But just the Galaxy, to their credit in that game, I think the XG ended up being pretty close, pretty roughly even in that game. They created some pretty good chances. They had the Sounders under steady pressure. I think the Sounders were the much better team in that game. They should have won the game, but it's not like that goal came completely out of nowhere. Whereas in this game,
yeah, fair.
Man, just Austin created 3 real quality chances in the game and scored 2 of them. And even the one that, I mean, Thomas made a great save on the header, but that's not ultimately that great of a chance. He just he gets up and makes a good head. Yeah, makes a good play. So super frustrating. The Sounders certainly had their chances to put it away. I'm less concerned about that just because, as we know, a chance looks nailed on and it's a goal less than half the time in reality, right? The second Jordan Morris chance, I think people were saying, he's got to bury that. That's got to be a goal. And I think the XG was something like, 0.46 or something like that. So less than 50-50. But to have like 3 or 4 of those chances not
Right.
find the back of the net in one game is frustrating. And I mean, credit to Stuver. He played an incredible game. I think it's fair to say, saved not only saved Austin from losing, but allowed them to win somehow. So yeah, credit to him. Great goalkeeping performance, but just a deeply frustrating game against a deeply mediocre Austin team.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And what's even more frustrating is the Sounders are now, I believe, just 1 point ahead of Austin, who sits in 6th place. Now, I don't still feel like Austin is that big of a danger because I just don't think they're that good. But the Sounders have 4 games here, all against playoff teams. They start with Vancouver, who is a potential Supporter Shield winner, and then they have a huge game against the Timbers, and then they have Real Salt Lake, who is, I guess they're not a playoff team right now. They're a couple points out of the playoffs, and they may be dead rubber. That game may not be super meaningful, as it turns out. But then they have New York City FC, who's one of the hottest teams in the league right now, on the road to close out the season. Now, I suppose you can argue that this result really, it was kind of already baked in. The Sounders kind of blew their chance to finish 4th when they dropped those points to the Galaxy. I mean, that's just sort of the reality of the Western Conference. And the way LAFC is playing right now, with the schedule that they have, it may have not ever been realistic for the Sounders to stay ahead of LAFC. But, one of these other teams maybe is going to come back, so who knows? But anyway, I guess I bring this up because it'll be interesting where the Sounders finish, because at this point, I would think avoiding LAFC has to be sort of like the top priority almost. Like if that means, the 5 matchup might be good if LAFC continues to play like this and jumps into 3rd or even 2nd, and you end up getting Minnesota or maybe San Diego in the 4-5 matchup. But then 6-7, again, it might be a wash, So the results, I guess I say all this because the results coming up are not so much about how high do the Sounders finish, it's how much momentum do they go into the playoffs with.
Yeah.
And the reality, they are almost certainly going to make the playoffs. It's very hard to envision a scenario right now where they don't. I believe if they get one more point, they're in the playoffs, or if RSL drops one more point, they're in the playoffs. So that's just sort of the way it is. But it's not great seeing the Sounders play this way right now, especially at the highs that they were 3 games ago. We were talking about this team being a legit MLS Cup contender, which I still kind of think is true. LAFC has sort of rocked my world in terms of what's possible. I don't know if people have been paying attention to this or not, but LAFC is on a bender right now. 3 straight games where one of Sun or Bouanga have a hat trick. They have 12 goals between them in the last 3 games. Just the 2 of them have 12 goals. I mean, that's all their goals, but it's an insane run right now that LAFC is on, but we don't need to talk about that. I'm much more worried about how the Sounders are playing, and they are just making these very repeatable mistakes that are driving me crazy.
Yeah, and they're mistakes that they should not be making. This was a team that had the best defense in the league last year. One of the best defenses in the league the year prior.
No, they were the best defense both years.
Both years.
Essentially
2 years
the same
back-to-back.
Personnel.
2 players that I think are going to be on most people's, defender of the year long list, let's say. But 2 guys any team would love to have as the anchor of their defense. Nuhu, whose only real value is in his defense. And they're just, and to be fair, neither Nuhu nor Alex Roldan were on the field for the second goal, which was the most egregious. That was Reed Baker-Whiting, who continues to be a work in progress on the defensive side of the ball. But I do think that the 2 center backs are much more at fault for that goal than he was.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that's, on the second goal against LA. Also, I think the center backs have a ton of the blame on that one. They're out of position. They're just not where they should be. They're not really paying attention to what's happening in the game. First goal against Austin last night, obviously, was just entirely Jackson Reagan just passing the ball directly into an Austin player. And I mean, sometimes when you are a defender who derives a lot of value from your distribution and your ability to spring attacks, that's just part of the deal, right? As occasionally you're going to get a pass blocked and you can live with it on the balance of things. But in the context of everything else that's been happening defensively with this team and how much of it has fallen at the feet of the center backs, it's just very deeply frustrating.
Very, very deeply frustrating is a good way of putting it. Let's just break it down though. There's been a lot of discourse, I feel like, around the second goal. And if we're going to I want to sort of assign some, maybe not percentages of blame, but maybe tiers of blame. Because that's a fun thing to do, right? And don't worry, we're going to get into the offensive struggles or the failures to finish as well. But let's start off here on this play. So it starts off where a ball is played into Reed Baker Whiting. He seems to have the ability to control it. He's not able to control it. It goes out of bounds for a throw-in. But the ball is, 90 yards away from goal right now. It is not a problematic situation.
Yeah.
It goes in. Austin plays it forward. And Jackson Reagan is able to easily win the header. Christian Roldan is right there for him. And he misdirects this header. And Austin is able to pick it up. And at that point, Austin is then able to sort of get out on the attack. And they move down the wing. And the Sounders are just sort of dropping back. Georgie Manungu does try to win the ball higher up the field. But everyone else is just sort of dropping back and letting him play. And then it gets it out into the wing. They make a pass to Danny Pereira, who is sitting about 20 yards away from goal. No pressure at all. He sends a cross to the back post, and CJ Fodry wins it in front of Reed Baker Whiting, but there are still two other center backs in the box, neither of whom do anything to mark Azuni, who comes in and is able to finish the goal. At first, it looked like maybe Jackson Reagan got a foot on it from behind him, but he's in nowhere to defend it. So if we're sort of like stacking the fault of this, who in this whole sequence do you feel like is most at fault?
I'm watching this right now again. I've watched it. I'm doing a Zapruder film kind of deal here.
I've watched it too many times.
It's tough. I misspoke. I forgot who was still actually on the field. But I don't think he had a ton of blame. I mean, nobody looks good in the sequence, but you know what? I'm not going to say he's most responsible, but Christian looks really bad on this play to me.
He does. He doesn't really mark anyone. Neither him nor Obed really mark anyone in the entire sequence.
Yeah, Christian's the piece that's I think egregious from Christian here for me is that he decides to follow the runner into the box who should have had covered instead of trying to close down the cross. The cross is just wide open. Reed is not anywhere close to his mark. He just gets straight up beaten. And then Jackson Reagan's on the wrong side of Azuni. I think Reagan probably you have to win that. But I mean, Yamar should be challenging for the initial header.
I mean, here's where, so for me, I'm going to go higher up the field. And to me, the biggest mistake is Reagan's inability to control that header at midfield.
Yeah.
Because all he has to do is tap it down for Christian Roldan and Sounders have possession and they can run the clock out. But instead he sort of just doesn't do anything with his header. And so that's to me the more egregious thing than because I kind of get where he's thinking in the box there, where there is a runner, because the first look is that he's got to be aware of that cross coming in to Zuni on that first, like on the first cross. So he has to be aware of that. And so that's how Azuni ends up goal side, because Reagan is having to defend him on the other side first.
Yeah.
but
fair.
he still has to be better.
Right. And I mean, Nuhu and Roldan are both marking a guy running into the box while Izuni runs in free. That's pretty bad.
Yes, that too.
It's a systemic breakdown. Nobody is really where they're supposed to be. Reagan actually waves Nuhu off to go get the runner who is being followed by Christian. I gotta stop watching this. It's really starting to piss me off.
It's
just organizationally a nightmare. And I think you make a good point about how there never should have been this chance in the first place. And if Jackson, has a better header at midfield, we're not in this mess. And I think that's a fair point. And so I think in that light, he's probably got to get the lion's share of the blame. But there is a lot of failure, and it's systemic, it's organizational, and it's becoming a little bit of a trend.
Yeah, it is starting to become a bit of a trend. And I think that's what's so frustrating is that we know the personnel on this team can defend.
Yeah.
Like there's no question. I believe in my bones that Christian Roldan is one of the best defensive midfielders in all of MLS.
Yeah.
And
no
yet,
question.
And yet he has a play like, and I'm sure part of it is tired. Like I'm sure he's just tired. He's kind of worn down. Like we talked about this on the last show that they needed to find a way to get him some games, one of those last two games off. And instead they played him, 150 minutes or so. And that had a cascading problem that I think did last into this game where he just did not look his best, especially towards the end. Maybe they should have used one of the subs on him. But, one of the people that I thought got a lot of stick in this one was for this last sequence was Georgie Manungu. And I honestly, the more I watched it, the more I did not think it was his problem. Like he at least tries to make a play higher up the field. And there's a bunch of guys on the field who don't even attempt to make a play. But for what it's worth, if I'm assigning blame, I think it goes Reagan with the most, Reed second most, again, partly because of what he did to create the throw-in in the first place. And then probably Yamar after that. And then we probably get to Obed, Christian, and then maybe Nuhu. And then maybe after that, you can have some Manungu talk or some Jesus. Like, I suppose there's something that some of the attacking players could do, but I'm just not that worried about what the attacking, like in that part, I'm just not worried about what the attacking players would do because the Sounders have plenty of defenders back that can disrupt that play. And again, they just don't do anything to disrupt it. That's what's so frustrating is that it's just too easy.
Yeah, it is extremely easy. And it's I know Austin has had these late winners lately. This is like the third home game in a row that they've had a winner after the 80 something minute or something like that.
Not all at home, but yeah, because they did this in the Open Cup and they did it, I think, in the league game before that. Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe they found some kind of secret
trick
about scoring late, but it's just, there's just no excuse for it. Like you've got the players to have the best defense in the league. And I understand that this season they have sacrificed some defense for attack. And I think that was a good choice. I think it's been beneficial for the entertainment value. And I think probably just sustainably for the team being, a trophy threat. But these guys, like, they're pretty highly, like, that's a pretty highly paid center back pairing. That cannot.
It's a very talented center back pairing. Like throw the money out. Like for me, on their day, that's one of the best center back pairings in the league.
Absolutely, yeah. And everybody has bad stretches, and like I feel like rightfully so. We talk a lot about Christian not getting rest and how he has at times looked fatigued. I didn't think that was really too much the case in this one, although I think he had a pretty bad game. Until late on, like post 75th minute, he was definitely dragging ass. But I mean, everybody that had been playing the whole game was, right. But it feels like Christian is the only person where we ever use that as an excuse. And like, yes, Jackson Reagan had, a lot of time out due to injury, but he's played a ton of minutes this year. Yamar has played a ton of minutes this year. Obed Vargas has played a ton of minutes this year. I think he's probably already has his career high in minutes. It probably has for quite a while. And I feel just you've got these situations where you've got like 3 games in 10 days or whatever it was, and 2 of them are on the road, and it's just there's got to be a way to get some of these guys some more rest. They've done a great job of rotating attacking players, partially because they've had to. But there's no reason that we couldn't have seen somebody else play center back for one of these games, or I don't know. It's just it's frustrating.
Kim did get into. He did start one of them.
He did,
but I do see your point. In any
case, yeah, all of these guys have played a ton of minutes this year, and these do feel like the kinds of mistakes fatigued players make, right? Where they just like they don't have like that extra gear late in games, maybe. But they've got to get it sorted out, because they're going to have to play playoff games on the road. Like they have not had a great league season this year, and
they haven't had many. Yeah, the road results have really not been good this year.
Yeah, they're 4-8-4 on the road, which is mediocre. I mean, it's
but
there are teams outside of the playoffs that have been better on the road.
Right. And, they've had, they drop points late to Atlanta. They drop points late to Austin. You can go down the list and find, points that they dropped that they should have won. And it's not that they've played horrible on the road. It's just that they've not been able to see results out on the road. And that's been what's so frustrating. But let's take a page out of Brian Schmetzer's notebook and not let the offense or the attackers off the hook here, because the Sounders did a really good job of creating chances in this game. Jordan Morris had 2 really good chances. Georgie Manungu had, frankly, one of the best chances that they're going to get. Obed Vargas had a really good chance. There were plenty of opportunities for the Sounders to take the lead and maybe even build on the lead. And they just were not able to get it done. And on some level, you tip your hat to Brad Stuver. Brad Stuver made probably 3 really, really good saves. Yeah. I thought the save that he made on the second Jordan Morris chance was a good save. Still, I want Jordan to finish that.
Yeah,
he made a great save on Manungu, but Manungu made it way too easy for him. Like Manungu has the whole goal to look at, and he just kind of puts it right in the middle of the goal, which is like the one place where Stuver could get to it.
Right at the height that he could get to it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that the goal he scored was not an easy finish. I thought that was a great goal that he scored right at the beginning of the second half.
Absolutely.
And Manungu was borderline unplayable in this game. Every time he got the ball, he was dangerous. But they just have to find a way to finish more of these chances. And they just they're not finishing as well as they should be. Now, this is a 3-game sample size also. This kind of thing happens. And so I am encouraged that they're getting into these spots, but they do need to be better in front of goal.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I think that if you look at the course of the season, I think that the defensive issues have cost them more. Like, because they've scored a lot of goals that maybe they shouldn't have scored. But it is true that in a game like this, like if they get a third goal before Austin gets their second, or sorry, if the Sounders get a second goal before Austin gets their second, I think the Sounders win in a walk. Like if Austin's having to chase this game, I think the Sounders probably get a third, depending on when they score the second. And they had plenty of chances, just like against LA. They had plenty of chances, and they had some good chances in the first half. Stuver made a great save on Christian in the first half from the header. They had like a 20-minute period where they had all of these corners, and everyone in the box was completely blind, and they couldn't figure out how to take advantage of that. And then, the couple of Jordan breakaways later, I mean, I'm willing to give him grace because he's just coming back from injury, but like those are the kind of chances that he does need to score one of, right?
I will say that he made a great pass on the Manungu. Like it's a great pass. Like he cuts out 3 defenders with this cutback that could not be placed more perfectly. So I do want to give him some credit for that. I actually think I'm mostly encouraged by Jordan Morris's play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people who have been listening to this show for a long time know where I stand on finishing. There's no evidence to suggest that Jordan is anything other than a quality finisher, as much as that's a thing that exists. And so I don't think when he has these, he has 2 1-on-1s in one game and he misses them, well, that's evidence that he just can't score in those situations, because he's scored tons of goals in those situations. But that's not the same as saying like he still needs to finish those chances. You know what I mean? It's like, I think over the course of the season, he's going to finish those at the rate you would expect him to finish them. But in a game like this, when you're saying, here's what we needed to do to win the game, and these are the things that didn't happen, him not finishing one of those 2 chances is a great example of, like that's one of the reasons that the Sounders didn't win the game. It's one of the reasons they lost the game. Georgie putting that ball where he did, Christian not being able to finish the header. Those are all, like, it's not a reason to think less of them as a player, but it is a reason to say this performance wasn't what it could have been, I guess, for lack of a better,
I almost forgot. There was also the Jesus Ferreira chance that he sort of like dribbled.
Oh, yeah.
He made it was a weird game for Ferreira because he showed a lot of great moments. Like, he set up Morris for both of his chances with great plays, great passes. He had the chance that he almost walked it into the goal, but he took one too many touches. But it was just that kind of game. It was the kind of game where the Sounders just didn't quite have the boots. And it leaves them feeling a lot more stressed, I think, during this last stretch. Again, not because I don't think missing the playoffs is really in the cards, but finishing 7th is definitely a realistic possibility.
Yeah. I think too, it's like you said earlier, it's not just where they finish in the table, although that is important. Like, you want as many chances to have home games as you possibly can get. But if they win 3 of their last 4 and maybe get a result in the 4th game, they kind of shake this off and get the defense under control, it's going to feel a lot better going into the playoffs.
Absolutely.
And if they just kind of sneak in, it's going to feel kind of inevitable that the season's going to be over pretty soon. And, as much fun as the Leagues Cup was, that's not going to be enough to overcome a disappointing early playoff exit, or finishing 7th and getting meekly knocked out in the first round in 2 legs or whatever. That's just not enough to make it feel good. So
we had this conversation in Discord a while back, right after Leagues Cup, actually, and it seemed like a silly conversation at the time. It feels more apropos now, but the discussion was sort of like, is this already a successful season because they've won Leagues Cup? And I would argue that you win a trophy, it's a successful season. That doesn't mean it's a satisfying season, though. And if they sort of shit the bed for the rest of the season, it will not be a satisfying season. It will be a successful season from look, you're doing this to win trophies. Leagues Cup was an amazing experience. If you give me a moment like that in a year, I consider that a successful season. But if you want me to be satisfied, I'm not going to be satisfied by going out in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I would disagree that it's a successful season just because we all know how I feel about the Leagues Cup. But I think it's a totally fair assessment. But you're absolutely right that it's not satisfying. If they get knocked out early in the playoffs, it's going to be it's not going to feel great. It's going to leave kind of a sour taste, I think, in everybody's mouth. And I think we've seen what this team is capable of. We've seen the heights they can get to, and for them to not even get close to that is going to be pretty upsetting. I mean, I think that if they get to a conference final, that's going to feel like you can't really ask for too much more than that, I don't think.
Yeah,
especially
to the conference final, I
with
think
a trophy.
That's
But if they can't get out of that first round, it's almost like a what's the point kind of situation. I guess I don't know. It's just
it does feel like a little bit like it would feel like a wasted season, a wasted opportunity, because I think what we've seen, the heights of this team are high. This is a team that is capable of winning really important games with a pretty impressive amount of depth. This is a good roster. I'm totally like comfortable with the state of the roster right now. But they gotta find ways to get better results in the short term. Hopefully it starts this week against Vancouver, which is going to be a huge test. You know, Vancouver is looking pretty good right now, and the Sounders are going to be missing Obed Vargas and Reed Baker Whiting, and you know it's not going to get easier here. It is. I will say one of the legit bummers is Obed Vargas deserves a chance to sort of get retribution for the red card in last year's home game against the Timbers, and he's not going to get that.
Yeah, that's too bad.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Well, this is probably a good place to call a break. We're going to come back, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about Obed and Paul Rothrock. I have a story coming out that this will be sort of piggybacking on, and we're going to talk about their situations and sort of the state of the roster a little bit. You're listening to Nos Arietes, which is part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible through our paid subscribers. Plans start as low as $30 a year and allow us to remain independent and mostly ad-free. Subscribers get access to all our written and podcast content, including a full-text RSS feed and a mostly ad-free podcast feed that includes every show in one spot. If you really like what we're doing, though, I'd encourage you to sign up at our higher tiers, which include all sorts of various perks. The most popular of those is our members-only Discord, where the real Sounders sickos hang out. I know I've called this group the smartest, funniest, and best-informed Sounders fans in the world, but it's more than the rough equivalent of a Sounders Mensa meeting. Discord is where we make things happen, like for real. You know the promotion the Sounders ran that offered fans the opportunity to trade in their Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock one? That originated in our community. You'll not only be the first to know about stuff, but you also have a semi-direct line to the movers and shakers at the Sounders organization. If you want to be one of the totally normal people who occupy the Sounder at Heart Discord, just become a supporter of Sounder at Heart. Anyway, thanks for listening, and go Durs. Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code Sounder at Heart, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code Sounder at Heart at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Welcome back to Nos Arietes. So, bit of news this week was Reed Baker Whiting signing a 3-year contract extension. I believe there's a fourth option year. Makes him a U22. That was a pretty big deal in terms of deals the Sounders needed to get done. Contract, that was probably the top, I would think, maybe not the top priority, but it was among the more pressing things the Sounders needed to do. They did not want, especially with how Reed had been playing recently, they did not want to, send him to the U20 World Cup and him look good and then bail. I think Reed is probably the future left back of this team right now. And so getting him under contract was good, but that leaves two other, there's going to be a bunch of players who have contract issues, but the two most pressing ones right now are Paul Rothrock and Obed Vargas. And we asked Craig Weibel about the status of their negotiations. And he basically said that they have offers that they're waiting on that we think are good offers. And it's sort of up to them whether or not they're going to take it. I don't have a lot of insight into the exact numbers that are being offered, But I think it's worth talking about both of them in broad terms and sort of explaining what's going on here. And they are pretty different situations. With Paul, it's pretty straightforward. It's about finding a number that both parties are satisfied with. At one point, I believe the Sounders were offering something like 400 and Paul's people were asking for something like 700. I don't know what the current status of that is. This was before the League's Cup final, which frankly, I would think his people were like, I don't know, maybe that's our minimum now. You just made our boy the poster child of this whole thing. He's playing well. Pay the kid, right? And I don't honestly begrudge him that. Shoot your shot. The Sounders, I think, are being a little bit more pragmatic and saying, look, this guy has 9 goals and 9 assists in his MLS career. He is a starter. He's starting a lot of games for us, but we're not really sure he's a starter in that if everyone is fit and healthy, I don't think he is probably going to be starting for the Sounders. So we don't want to pay him like a starter. But I think still, this is to me a deal that will probably get done because there's probably a number that makes sense, right?
I think so. I think most likely the Sounders want Paul here, and I would guess that Paul probably wants to be here.
Right.
And I think the Sounders' assessment is correct. I think that he is. I think the last 3 games have been kind of evidence of this. He's a difference maker as a rotational guy. He's a guy that you absolutely love to have on the team. There are situations like as a guy that you have to plug in as a starter for a stretch because of injuries. He's perfect for that. He's exactly at the level you'd want as a championship caliber team. And I think he's a starter in MLS, just not for a championship caliber team. And so if he wants to go somewhere and start, and that's more important to him than than being in Seattle or whatever, I don't begrudge him that. But I think ultimately the Sounders are correct in their assessment of sort of what his talent level is like. And there's at the end of the day, we have like a lot of data on what players like that make, and the Sounders, I'm sure, are probably going to stick, to that data.
Yeah. I mean, who would you say the comps are for him?
Well, it's interesting because his FBref comps are pretty good, but we're looking at sort of a limited amount of data for those. I don't know. I mean, would you say Paul Arriola is a comp for him?
I mean, that is actually a pretty good comp, I think.
It does get interesting when you talk about it that way.
And he's a $1.5 million. He was a DP at one point.
Yeah. And then,
but also he has he has a more proven track record. I think that's one of the big differences.
So FBref has his top. Oh no, he's not anymore. That's changed. At one point, Jonathan Bamba was his top comp, and Jonathan Bamba is an extremely well compensated player. But he also is making way too much money, and that's the Chicago Fire continuing to give tons of money to guys like that is why they're the Chicago Fire. But currently, it's the Georgian guy that plays for Atlanta United, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. Sabo.
Yeah. Saba. Saba.
Okay, he's good. That was a good choice by him. He's making $900K.
Yeah.
I would not pay Paul Rothrock that personally.
Yeah, that seems high.
But I think that if his agent's any good, he's going to have that as a data point.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I am trying to think of good comps, and I probably don't pay close enough attention to the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes it tough is that there's some sort of unquantifiable thing about Rothrock, and that it's the Seattle connection, right? And I think more the leverage that he has is he's not going to be an MLS free agent, so he can't just go anywhere in MLS. But I would think an English championship team would be all over him. Like he's someone who I think would be successful in the English championship, not necessarily as a starter, but someone who's going to get who can find success there, who's going to get you goals, who's going to, keep your teammates honest. And I could see Paul loving that. And so I would think that is probably his fallback option if things don't happen with the Sounders. I really do hope the Sounders figure it out. This feels like something that will get figured out to me. It's hard for me to imagine him walking over, that money is really it's going to keep this from happening. So I'm going to assume this one gets done. The Obed Vargas one, though, is a lot more complicated. And to explain what's going on there, he is technically going to be under contract next year. The Sounders have already picked up his 2026 option. But that's of little consequence if he gets to basically if the Sounders can't come to an agreement with Obed on a long-term deal, I think they almost have to transfer him this winter, because if they don't transfer him this winter, they've basically missed that opportunity. And you would think Obed is going to, if they don't convince him to sign before next season, what he's saying is, I want to take my chances and try to go to Europe on a free. And he's not, and I don't know that he's guaranteed to make more money that way. I don't know if teams are going to be offering him $2-3 million a year. They might. I don't know. They might. I'm not really good with understanding the math of if you don't have to pay a transfer fee, does that really end up going back into the player's salary? Probably not.
I mean, I think it does for some players, but
yeah,
you still have to pay a signing bonus usually for free. I think that's where the money comes from more than salary, is signing bonus. You get a bigger signing bonus, if you sign on a free.
Sure. Which is the player's money, right?
Yeah. Well, or the agents, but
yeah, that's a good point. Fair enough.
But I think that is a super risky approach by Obed. I really do. I think that now the unknown here is, have the Sounders gotten offers that they're not telling anybody about, that they have turned down, that Obed knows about? If that's the case, then I think it's a smart move by Obed to try to push a move. But if there haven't been offers from Europe, if that is genuinely the case, and the only standing best offer out there is from Tigres, and he has said, I don't want to go to Liga MX, I want to go to Europe, and the Sounders have said, yeah, we're willing to try to make that happen. He's putting himself in a situation where the Sounders say, look, man, you can go to Tigres, or we can sit your ass and not play you for a year. I don't think the Sounders would do that, but I don't think he has the leverage to try to force a move, especially because I think the Sounders are amenable to helping him move.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I hadn't even really thought of that sort of that sort of situation where it gets really ugly. Like, that would be really kind of a bummer. But
it would be.
I don't think it will come to that. That seems unlikely. It seems very un-Soundersy that they would sort of punish a player like that. But I suppose it is. You're right. It is sort of like on the game board. That is one of the moves.
It is un-Soundersy, but if they want to play in the international transfer market, it's going to have to become something they're more comfortable doing. Because, look, the Sounders, I'm assuming the Sounders are willing to offer him a max U22 contract.
You would hope,
let's
right?
For
let's
the
just
sake
assume that.
Yeah, for the sake of this discussion, let's say that's what's on the table. And they have said, look, if we get an offer from a club in Europe that works for us and works for you,
right,
we're not going to stand in the way of it. They would probably end up taking less money to help him get to Europe than they could get from Tigres right now.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not super Soundersy to punish him in a situation like that, but it's a crazy thing to do, to just say, like, okay, well, you won't sign a contract. We haven't gotten any offers for you, except for this huge one that's probably bigger than the one we said we would wait to get to give you what you're looking for in your career.
Right.
So we're just going to lose you for nothing, which would be malpractice. Whoever allows that to happen should not have a job anymore. he's the most valuable player ever produced by the club. To lose him for nothing would be humiliating and should be a career ender, right? So, yeah, they can't let that happen just because they want to have this like touchy feely feel good reputation of always doing right by the players. Like it has to be a two-way street, and I'm totally like a worker power guy. But in this situation, like you have to.
I mean, that's the rules of the game. I mean, essentially, yeah, right. I mean, what you're saying is like these are the rules of the game, and you got to sort of,
right,
warts and all, sort of have to play the cards you have.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is also another risk, even short of the Sounders sort of going apoplectic, is look, if we're assuming best intentions here. We're assuming they're offering the max TAM or not max TAM, max U22, which would be $1 million this year, $1.1 million it would be $1 million in 2025. It would be 1.1 in 2026. Sorry, 1 million in 26, 1.1 in 27, and then potentially even more than that going forward, because the new CBA might drop numbers that are even more lucrative, right? Where like who knows, it might be 1.5 in 2028. You can just kind of go on, right? So let's assume the Sounders are making a real, like that's real money. You know, that's a 5x raise that he's looking at getting right now, and he's essentially would be walking away from that and risking injury or risking something else that really messes with him. And we don't have to look that far to see examples of this where players get these injuries and you know, and anytime you get a serious injury, it casts doubt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so so hopefully that's not, I really hope they're able to come to a deal. You know, the last thing Obed said was something along the lines of, I think we'll get this figured out, but I have not heard anything from the Sounders side of things that makes me think they are super confident that this is going to happen and that they are hearing all the, you know, I think there are some very real threats is maybe the wrong word, but I think there's signs being given that they might just wait out the contract, which would be such a bummer.
Yeah, it really would. It would be a total nightmare. And it's so unfathomable to me that would be allowed to happen that I'm just not even considering it as a possibility. And you know, Obed seems to have genuine affection for the club, and I'm sure he doesn't want to burn any bridges or anything like that. So,
right.
You know, I'm hopeful they can work something out, and you know, maybe he says I'm not going to sign a contract until after the winter. And then if we can't find a move in the winter, then I'll sign the deal. That's a possibility, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, that would be an interesting play.
I don't know how much sense that would make for him because
I don't know how much sense it would make for him either, but
free agent. But but I do think the U20 World Cup could very well take care of that problem. Like if he goes and plays well, I think that the offers are going to come for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's sort of, I guess I just wanted to lay that out for everyone. I don't have a lot of insight into where this is going, but you know, these are things to understand. And I think for the best of everybody, it would probably be good if Obed sort of balls out in the U20 World Cup and makes himself really attractive to someone and then has a good playoff and the Sounders win MLS Cup and some European power comes in and says, look, we want to pay you $20 million for Obed Vargas because we need him right now. We think he's a starter for us. So let's hope for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be great. That'd be really good. Yeah. Everybody wins.
All right. Everyone wins. Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to call it a show there. Thank you to everyone for listening. Of course, we had kicked around the idea of trying to do a live show next week. I guess it would be next week. Yeah, it would have been next week, but I don't think we're going to do that. It was logistically would have been tough. It would have been fun, but I just don't think I have it in me right now. This has been crazy.
Yeah.
But I think next week we'll have plenty of action going on with the Sounders and 2 Cascadia games. Jeez, what are they doing to us? And
yeah, it's a brutal run to the end of the year. Thankfully, three home games, which is nice, but still tough.
Yeah, very much. All right. Well, with all that said, we're going to get out of here. I'm Jeremiah Shan signing off for Aaron Campo and Lickett. Of course, and our sponsors, Full Pool Wines, Hacks and Ferments, and of course our subscribers. This is Nos Audietis, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
Let's go, Sounders.